We're in a time of disclosure and we're witnessing to it, and I think it's important for our next several generations to very much waken up to what is within us so that we can move forward and return to a Type 1 spacefaring civilization in peace and prosperity.
And what is the biggest secret? Perhaps pyramids of a lost civilization that could lead to a high-tech civilization such as Atlantis. In my book, Secrets of Antarctica, I do have the GPS coordinates for people to look on Google Earth themselves, and also photographs and images of these perfectly aligned, four-sided pyramids.
Where are the flying cars?
They have been approved in America. They're already in assembly and production lines, and there are already waiting orders of over 2 million in America. We've had, at the point that we're recording this, 3 drops on the UFO files, and the disclosure now going wide that there is at least 5 different hybrid species or extraterrestrial, non-human people who are living on Earth. That knowledge that's applied gives us the innate power to stand in our power, the one that we were given, and our soul is a sound of unlimited love.
Dragi gledatelji, dobrodošli. Ja sam Ines Žižić, a vi gledate ATMA Podcast. Danas u studiju, evo ovdje u Solinu, imam čast ugostiti 2 specijalna gosta iz Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, iz Kanade. Oni su ovdje na jednom malom ljetovanju, ali na tom ljetovanju su došli nakon 2 tjedna što su bili kod doktora Semira Osmanagića u Visokom, gdje se održala konferencija, turneja, predavanja, ljetni solstici na bosanskim piramidama koji je trajao dosta, 10-ak dana. Tu je bio i Michael Cremo s kojim sam također snimila podcast nedavno. Oni su 2 Breda, ja ih zovem 2 Breda, Brad Wozny i Brad Olsen. Welcome to ATMA Podcast.
Hvala vama. It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for taking your time, because I know you would love to swim, you would like to party in Split, but you come here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and congratulations to all your fans in Croatia and then even Bosnia. We've been fortunate to be at the games, watching them online and how it has been going on. So congratulations to everybody in the World Cup.
Thank
as well.
you.
You know, it's very important for everybody now.
It is. Da vam predstavim naše goste. Brad Wozny, ovaj ovdje gospodin u bijeloj košulji, je bivši kanadski vojnik, reiki majstor i scenarist. Za vrijeme lockdowna je bio progonjen od kanadske i američke vlade zbog toga što je stao na stranu slobode. Bio je protiv svih oblika, ako se sjećate, a vjerojatno se sjećate, one lockdown, covid tiranije. Nakon sudjelovanja u kanadskom konvoju slobode, ako se sjećate toga, pokrenuo je svoj podcast pod naslovom The Sovereign Soul Show, u kojem je gostio preko 1000 gostiju i u kojem pokriva teme baš kao ATMA, znači teme duhovnosti, slobode, alternativne povijesti, geopolitičkih događaja. Predivan podcast. Brad, thank you so much for doing your podcast. It's very important podcast.
Mahalo.
Yeah.
Mahalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Moj drugi gost je također Brad Olsen, istraživač, nagrađivani autor, čak 11 knjiga, međunarodni predavač o drevnim civilizacijama, izgubljenim tehnologijama i svim onim zanimljivim misterijama povijesti koje također obrađujemo na ovom podcastu, moje omiljena tema. Ono što je interesantno kod Breda je da je putovao na svih 7 kontinenata, uključujući i Antarktiku, te je gostovao u brojnim svjetski poznatim dokumentarnim emisijama, među kojima naravno i Ancient Aliens, isto kao i Michael Cremo. Brad, thank you so much for doing your mission and welcome to my podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to have this conversation about ancient ruins and faraway places, and we're right across the street from the Roman ruins of Salona.
The best place to be. Yeah, it's a perfect
Couldn't be in a better place.
Yeah. Ono što je zanimljivo da ćemo sa Bradom razgovarati dosta o Antarktici, zato što je njegova posljednja knjiga upravo o tome. On je osobno bio na Antarktici sa kako bi rekla, sa jedrenjakom. O tome nešto kasnije. Razgovaramo o zanimljivim događajima s Balkana, o njihovim impresijama, kako im je bilo u Bosni, što su sve ovdje doživjeli, naravno o izgubljenim civilizacijama, drevnim tehnologijama, Antarktici i onome što se događa iza, kako bi rekla, iza backstage-a, rekla bi moja prijateljica, u sjeni trenutnih geopolitičkih događaja. Prvo ćemo početi za oboje, imam pitanje kako je bilo u Bosni. So, you have spent some time in Bosnia, in Visoko. Also, you visited Zavidovići. You've seen the big balls, spheres, and you saw Daorson, the big megalithic, I don't know, what is it, town? Fortress, yeah. So, what are your impressions from this tour in Visoko?
Well, my impression is we're living and visiting a very ancient civilization here, one that might be much, much older than the Romans or the Greeks, perhaps a race before the Ice Age. And we just saw some megalithic stones right here in Solana. So right here, we could be looking at a civilization that got built upon by the Romans, by an ancient builder race. I think that's really the best way we can describe this civilization that put up the pyramids in Visoko and the giant spherical balls. Apparently there were 400 of them at one time, and there was a big storm in 1935, and they just came all rolling out of a hillside. So what were they doing there? And then, of course, you have the megalithic ruins or a fort in Dowson as well. And it's just incredible to see this kind of ancient history all over the country.
So you see that the Balkans have some special significance in this area. And also spiritually, maybe. It's always connected. Spirituality is always connected with these ancient sites.
Yeah, that's right. And you have the sea routes with Diocletian's palace right on the edge of the Adriatic Sea. So you'd have sea routes, and then there are many overland road routes to get here. And of course, the Dalmatian coast is very famous for, well, not only tall people and beautiful people, but wine and olives grow here, and it's just a crossroads of civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and thank you very much once again for allowing us to be on here, and it's an honor because
it's my pleasure.
And thank you again, Valavama, to everybody in the audience, because Brad Olsen is one of the guys that I watched. And he doesn't know this yet, so saving it to a later show. But when he was on Gaia, and he's also done the ancient history channels. And I was following some of the other folks. One of the other amazing man, David, who just passed away under mysterious circumstances, who was a bit of a mentor. Exactly, David Wilcock is a mentor to Brad's, and I've been watching David Wilcock. So for me to be in a position to have a podcast, to interview the people on subject matter that I feel not only is of interest to me, but is really interest to the entire history of our race, our species, and this planet, and what happened before we were here, perhaps, and then what happens elsewhere in our galaxy that influences our life today, and to get us back into a sacred remembrance, which calls us forth from our soul, which we can meet with our mind at a consciousness level, and we can carry that forth into our lives, is truly magical. So here I am with Brad Olsen, who I had watched years before, and then I've had several times on my show over the last few years. And then now we're traveling together to Visoko, meeting Dr. Samir Osmanagic for me the first time. Brad has known him for a while. Some other incredible people too. And to witness in Visoko, for example, where you have been, Inez, your lovely husband, a few times with our common friend, to realize that you have the number 1 and the number 2 largest pyramids of the world. This is hidden history, with the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun and the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, number 1 and number 2. You go 3,000 meters below it, there's an underground lake. 500 meters above that is an iron plate, which was made by the ancient builder race civilizations, which we're discussing, and the fact that we now have scalar wave energy, which has been modeled at every single one of those, just like the capstone pyramids in Giza and other places across the planet. And our planet was literally cast with hundreds of thousands of pyramids alone. I've found one in Squamish, British Columbia, as well as another one in British Columbia and Canada. And all of these places are made national parks, or they're on Indian Native American reservations, which is very difficult to get access to. And especially if you say there might be a pyramid here, everybody goes crazy, right? You're crazy because you said it. I should point that to me. But I'm like, well, I don't know. But it looks like a perfect cut, just like Dr. Sam had saw. So back to round out the question, the fact that you are also sharing this knowledge across all of our languages and peoples of the world is extremely important, because we are in a time of disclosure. I believe all of your audience is seeing this right now, and we're witnessing to it. And I think it's important for our next several generations to very much waken up to what is within us, so that we can move forward and return to a type 1 spacefaring civilization in peace and prosperity, 100%. And hopefully this will happen, in the next decade or so, in our lifetimes. And I think it's up to us to carry that forward, if this makes sense to you.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, after visiting Visoko and speaking to people there, why do you think that mainstream archaeology and historians dismiss or underestimate the pyramids in Visoko?
Well, my feeling is they didn't like to be undermined by Dr. Sam, who saw it the whole time and then just realized we can start doing excavations. And they found composite cement on the Pyramid of the Sun. And then we went to visit another excavation site on the Pyramid of the Moon where there were terraces. So I think the standard archaeology just didn't like the fact that an amateur like Dr. Sam would come in and get the credit for discovering the oldest and largest pyramids in the world, where they like to think, oh, well, you have to go to academy and study this thing for a long time, and you can't just come out and say that we've found it. But he did, and there we are. And I met him when I was working on this book, Sacred Places Europe, and I was aware of these pyramids right away. And we had met at several of these conferences that we both speak at. And I showed him this book, which has a map of the pyramids in the Visoko Valley. And he was very impressed that I knew about it. And you can see the old picture of Visoko. It clearly appears to be a pyramid. Now there are trees on it. And this is just a mystery that has been waiting to be solved. And Dr. Sam comes around 30 years ago and he uncovers it.
What do you think, you were speaking about ancient builders, let's call them like that.
Yeah.
How did they shape and move these giant megalithic stones?
Well, the ancient builder race, who is presumed to be the creators of these pyramids in Visoko, were using a form of cement, and we could see it. It was pretty thick, almost a meter thick, and it was a conglomerate using a type of cement, which of course the Romans had mastered the use of cement, but it was with more rocks, and it was very, very hard and solid. And we saw it at a nearly perfect 45-degree angle on the side of the Pyramid of the Sun, where they had been doing some excavations. And it would appear that they would just sculpt the mountain itself first, that it was a pre-existing pyramidally shaped mountain, but then they poured this cement over the top of it. And you can even see underneath it that there's earth and soil, then the layer of cement, and then there was a bunch of vegetation and soil on top, which has been removed.
What do you have to say?
Well, I think this is, if I can expand it to a worldview, then, it's something. I had my spiritual awakening to megalithic structures in 2006 in Peru. And I was fortunate at the time with a man named Shaman Puma, who has now been on Gaia and other shows, an amazing man, to spend 10 days with him and journey from Cusco, Peru, to Ollantaytambo, to Machu Picchu, and whatnot. This is a stone I still carry from the bottom of Machu Picchu in the river that another shaman had macramated into a bracelet. And through Shaman Puma, and I got to learn about the history of the true civilization which was here before, and who it is that they also acknowledge too with the ancients. And of course they have the condor spirits and the animal spirits, but they also acknowledge the fact that there was a race that helped them build Machu Picchu and all of these ancient sites. And then in Peru, we all know the Nazca lines. is sacred Nazca line. So what is this images that you can see on the desert floor from space in the Atacama Valley? And then also, which came up 4 or 5 years ago, Gaia also brought it out about these mummified remains, where the Moscow Institute had also used X-ray technology and LiDAR technology underneath to find all of these remains of these small beings and creatures that were bipedal, humanoid-like, but not human, and they're able to also take tissue samples and whatnot. And now again, bringing it back to today in disclosure, we've had, at the point that we're recording this, 3 drops on the UFO files, and the disclosure now going wide that there is at least 5 different hybrid species or extraterrestrial, non-human people who are living on Earth.
Wow.
And living among us. And that has now come out by the US government. So there's something to be said where we don't have to rely on the government to get us to that point, because we know that their satellites from space, if they can track a vehicle from 150 kilometers away and they can look at the dead mosquito on the license plate and zoom in on that, we know they can see into the Earth and likely through most of the Earth already. So they know about all of these structures, some of the major superpowers, for a long period of time. Just like Brad will talk to you about his book and Secrets of Antarctica, what Moscow knew about Berlin and the U-boats going to Antarctica, right? They've known that. It's up to us to bring this truth out. And it's up to us to have these conversations across our dinner tables, in our schools, out on the cruises and the vacations and exploring these incredible sites, because who wants to go to Walt Disney World and go to a ride when you can go into a tunnel in the Visoko, and we have people who Dr. Sam has been showing have went in with 80 to 90% blindness, and a few weeks later, well, they have improved their eyesight, and now they're down to 30%. Or people who have had stage 4 problems, because I want to allow you to keep your YouTube channel, and they are remediated by just going into these tunnels that have scalar wave energy, and it's all been measured. So now we're at this point in time, Inez, where science has completely proven mysticism. I can give Reiki to you, and I can charge my hand, and it can be seen by a special camera. So there's true energy that I'm beaming light from my hands to you, and I don't even have to be in anybody's proximity. So we're all here now, and I think it's an incredible time for all of us to be alive and sharing and getting this information out everywhere. So it's the best place for us to be, because we're no longer at masks, lockdowns, and the misinformation, right? Our misinformation, and all of us who are the crazy ones, are now more or less the enlightened spiritual awakening of the planet that's happening. And I think that's a catalyst for change, which is much needed right now.
Yeah, COVID was such a catalyst. And so many people started with fantastic projects back then. So many eyes were opened at that moment. It was difficult time, but it was necessary time. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
Rasmin?
Okay, let me ask you a few questions about some topics you cover in your podcast, Brad W. Brad O and Brad W.
In English, they say the two B-rads. B-rad, yeah.
Looking at today's world in general, what do you believe are the biggest changes happening beneath the surface of these current events? Maybe many of us fail to notice.
Right. I believe the free energy. It was just announced today as well on this recording. Supersonic is back. So remember the British Concorde? I grew up with it. We all grew up with it. You remember the British Concorde? You can take off in London, land in New York in 92 minutes or something. You know, if there's a lineup for the restroom, you might as well just sit down in your seat, because you're going to land in New York beforehand. So the Supersonic is back. Free energy technology. We have the Popular Science was one of the magazines that I used to read all the time as a kid. And they would talk about the flying cars, right? And then I used to watch the Jetsons cartoon. I don't know if you had this over here. The Jetsons cartoon, but do you remember this?
No, of course.
I'm waiting for flying cars.
They literally, the flying cars have been
Where are the flying cars?
They have been approved in America. They're already in assembly and production lines, and they're already waiting orders of over 2 million in America, ordered in America for the flying cars. And the FAA regulations have changed to allow starting at the end of 2027 and through to 2029, full compliance and allowance for actual lanes for residential and commercial use of flying cars, not drones, flying cars from your home, lifts up and off you go. Electric VTOL, vertical takeoff or landing, right? So that is happening.
Wow.
That legislation is already there. That's already moving forward, and there are orders already there. And then in the Jetsons, they remember when they would sit there and they would have their breakfast, they would turn on a monitor and you could FaceTime with other people in the Jetsons and get in your car that would hover. So now we have electromagnetic and anti-gravitic propulsion technology that's already been out there and disclosed, right? Nassim Harriman did it several years ago. Others have done it several years ago. It's all out there on the web, so people can look at how they can use magnets and opposing forces, and they can do levitation on vehicles. And then we can have the free ion energy and the propulsion. And the funny thing about President Trump right now is he launched, or they announced rather, the launch of new nuclear energy, but they are fission reactors. And then we also have ion propulsion coming out. All that stuff is finally here, being spoken to the public from a governmental level. The previous government administrations that have been hiding it. So that is something also, I think, from the globalists that they don't like you to know about, right? And I think we are at a time very quickly that in the next few years, we're going to be phasing out the petroleum, which we know that they don't like for a period of time, but we'll be able to switch over to things like free energy. Like we have these incredible energetic magnets and these generators rather, like the pyramids that we saw in Visoko, like the pyramidal and megalithic structures we see across Peru, or over in Mexico, or in Costa Rica, or everywhere else in the world that has pyramids. So it would be very difficult to find a place that does not have pyramids. Brad can speak to you about that from his Antarctica as well too. It's amazing where we are right now.
Yes. You were you were mentioning Donald Trump, and I must ask you this question because you're also covering this in your podcast. What is really happening behind the scenes in, I will not say American politics because it's, America is ruling the world.
Right.
What's going on with Donald Trump, and what's with the Epstein files, and with his relationship with Israel, and with the current Middle Eastern war? What's behind the scenes?
So I can't really speak, I don't have any non-disclosure agreement, so at least I can speak freely, but I don't have more insider information beyond what I could share is what's publicly out there. You can see the executive orders that have been published since his first administration. You can also see that there are over 800,000 still, what do they call them? Not subpoenas, getting the legal term for that.
Arrest warrants?
Warrants.
Warrants.
Sealed warrants. And for each one of those, they can contain up to 99 names, right? Sealed warrants. And so as part of investigation, which is going on, that's broad. I can speak to it from a standpoint of knowing two insiders / whistleblowers personally and being with them personally, who have shared information on the Canada side, the Picton Pig Farm of Canada, which is the Epstein Island of Canada. And the names on those files are almost anybody you would think of in Hollywood, almost anybody you would think of in Canadian American politics and other places around the world at the Epstein Island of Canada. And those have been furnished. And some of those people that were named but not at the highest levels, there have been some public arrests made in Canada by American authorities. So think about this. Bosnian police come to Croatia and arrest Croatians and take them back to Bosnia. This is what's been happening for the last year in Canada. American authorities on Canadian soil making arrests of Canadians and bringing them, extraditing them to America without any red tape whatsoever. That has also been announced by the DOJ. What's also been going on, you can see that there are a number of executive orders which have not been published. I think the last count was 240 of them. Many of those going back to the first administration. And I've been fortunate to have two generals on my show, American military generals, and they've talked about the Q operation. And the Q operation is 800 military flag officers and the Army of Northern Virginia, which was stood up at the time of Eisenhower, passed over to, the 800 came in the last 20 years, was passed over to JFK, because of, we've seen with Eisenhower, the UFOs, what has gone there after World War II. This is, again, allegedly, because I don't have all of the documentation, because we're on YouTube, that has been going on the scenes, behind the scenes. So you have the white hat, black hat operation, CIA, and elsewhere throughout the world. So they have disclosed that. And that is pretty amazing, because from their mouths, they have said Trump was chosen to run. President Trump was chosen to run, because you can also find between 2012 and 2014, during President Obama's tenure, that there were one of those generals who I've had many times on my show, who President Obama said there's this Major General Paul E. Vallely who wants to take 250,000 American Marines and Army and take over Washington, D.C. And he talks about returning a republic back to the American people. Well, now we look at this and see that in 1871, the United States of America Republic, as per the Revolutionary War was established, was usurped by the City of London, the British monarchy, the Vatican Bank, and turned into a corporation. And since 1871, with the Organic Act in Washington, D.C., the American Republic ceased to exist, and the United States of America Incorporated Corporation continued. That has now been dissolved. So it's really incredible, because it seems to be playing at multiple levels. And I don't have answers to I have questions of some of the things President Trump has put out there. I'm like, I don't know where it's going here.
Oh my God.
Wow. But at the end of the day, if you look at it from a 30,000 foot level, what do we have? We have on July 4th, a brand new American gold-backed currency coming back, a constitutional money that has already been reported by the Treasury in the press release on the 3rd week of March. That's big news. You now have the Genius Act, which goes to that and says this will be a gold-backed currency. It's right there online for people to read. And as a result of that too, we know that there are different digital asset companies that are now tied in to, instead of the BIS and the SWIFT, they're now running, it seems, all to be on XRP Ledger and RippleNet. Now, people can start splitting hairs and saying that's all under control again of a government and institution. Well, it's like we discussed pre-show. Overall, it's better to have, my opinion, better to have this than to have what we were about to get.
Okay, let's move to some other topics. Really. Yeah, that's the world we live in.
It is.
Brad O. You recently published your book, as I said in introduction, Secrets of Antarctica.
Yeah.
And you even sailed to Antarctica on a sailboat. Yes. So tell us a little bit more, where does this fascination with Antarctica come from, and how did you went there? Yeah.
Well,
such an adventure.
A lifetime traveler, really. So just had the opportunity about 8 years ago to go to South America, and then bought a vehicle and drove through several countries with my partner at the time. And then we went down to Ushuaia, Argentina, southernmost city of the world, and just inquired about gaining passage to Antarctica. First, we were going to get on a cruise ship, and that's the way most people go. But it's a shorter trip, and you don't get to really explore as much on the ground when you get there. So we got the opportunity to go on a sailboat, and we paid for our own passage and went down through the Drake Passage, roughest seas of the world, got violently ill with seasickness. But once we got there, it was refreshing to get on land for a little bit. But basically, we're on the boat for 26 days, and it was a Polish vessel out of Gdansk, Poland. There are 11 Polish people, including the captain and co-captain, and 3 Americans. And we're all still friends, especially the 3 Americans. And we have a reunion once in a while and talk about this incredible journey down to the bottom of the planet Earth.
Yeah, so tell us more about Antarctica. Where does this fascination comes from, and what is the biggest secret of Antarctica?
And that was my line of questioning. I self-financed all my trips to all 7 continents. And I was going there just to see if I could unravel some of these mysteries that we've heard about such as antediluvian civilization and pyramids down there. I was asking about these 3 massive motherships that are supposedly from the melting ice in certain places revealing themselves. And also stories of giants and the elongated skulls, and perhaps this builder race of a long ago period that may have left some constructions in Antarctica. So all of my questioning pretty much led to, we don't know anything about that, or we're not sure. I don't think they were hiding anything, just that the people that work on the bases, they're very compartmentalized. They just know what they're coming there to do, which is to study the penguins or the ice fish or the geology of the place. And so I just don't think they knew. But there are big mysteries down there. And to answer your question, what is the biggest secret? Perhaps pyramids of a lost civilization that could lead to a high-tech civilization such as Atlantis, which may be a component of this ancient builder race we've been talking about. And while we didn't have the opportunity to go farther inland to see some of these locations, in my book, Secrets of Antarctica, I do have the GPS coordinates for people to look on Google Earth themselves, and also photographs and images of these perfectly aligned, 4-sided pyramids, or perhaps they're just pyramidal shaped mountains, which are called nunataks, but they're in several different locations. So I think the jury is still out whether or not they were created with intelligent hands, and that would lead us to believe that there was a very high-tech civilization that had once inhabited long, long before it was ever discovered in the year 1821 by people that discovered it accidentally. They were down there to hunt seals and catch whales, bring it back to Europe for just for making a living. We went to old whaling stations and locations down there. But then when you look at the ancient maps of the Pirija Reisa map and others, and I notice you have one on the wall that shows Antarctica right over there, that there was always this knowledge of a southernmost continent. And that just begs the question, where did they get that information? And that too could go back to a much earlier civilization. In fact, in the liner notes on the Pirija Reisa map, it says that they were drawn from copies that go all the way back to the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. So it's just incredible that there would be this information in the form of maps showing a place that was drawn 300 years before it was discovered.
That's really something. So I also heard some stories about certain Captain Boyd, or am I saying correctly, who went to Antarctica back in the time? Admiral, yeah.
Richard E.
What do we know about that?
Yeah, he was one of the most decorated U.S. admirals, Navy captains in history of the United States. And he had made several trips to Antarctica. He was the first aviator who also flew planes to fly over the South Pole. And I show in my presentation that the maps of his original flight in 1929, that he went far out of his way, about 150 miles out of his way after he went to the South Pole. And it happens to be that that place where he went out of his way is one of the no-fly zones today at the South Pole. Now, you can go to the South Pole. There's even an area for people to camp there, and I've talked to groups that organize trips. It's a lot of money. You can go there, though, but you cannot go over this no-fly zone. You can't even cross-country ski into it. They call it the clean air sphere area. They're monitoring pollution, and somehow somebody on cross-country skis would violate that, which I think is a cover story for a large hole in the ice. And I talked to an eyewitness named Brian S., who was one of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers, who actually flew over it and saw it, that there is this massive hole. And so how this ties into Admiral Byrd is because on the second flight to the South Pole, which happened to be right at the beginning of Operation High Jump, he went there and there was 3 hours of missing time. And then after he passed away, his son and his nephew acquired his personal diary and published the secret diary of Admiral Byrd, which describes this journey to a paradise inside the Earth. So then they would have gone into the hole, had 3 hours of missing time, and then were intercepted by 2 UFOs they called Flugelrods, but they had German insignias on them. And over the radio comes a Germanic voice that says, "Hello, Admiral Byrd. You are in good hands. We'll be landing shortly in the domain." And they called it the domain of the Ariani. And it was this under ice, very high-tech civilization. Admiral Byrd described in his diary as a Buck Rogers-like city, which was a famous comic book in the 1950s, talking about a very advanced race off planet. But this one happens to be under the ice on the continental level, 2 miles below the polar plateau. And so I should also point out that Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. There's 14 active volcanoes and 93 geothermal vents. So it would have the propensity to create these large domes under the ice, and as well as a chimney to release the warm air. And that's what the big hole in the ice is. It's not the only one. I've located other massive holes on the polar plateau as well. But this one you cannot see on Google Earth. It is masked out, and it just begs the question, what are they trying to hide?
Wow. I also must ask you this question because many viewers will maybe comment it. So what's your view, since you've been on Antarctica, about flat Earth?
Well, I don't think it's correct because I've been to the land of Antarctica. Sometimes I do interviews and I'll even pull out my cell phone. I'll say, "You want to see some pictures? I'll show you what it looks like." And they talk about an ice wall. Well, it's misidentified as an ice shelf is what it really is. And I saw it. And they're huge. I mean, they're 30 stories tall and just a sheet of ice that is coming off through glaciation. But they're hollow underneath. And just this last year, when all the findings of the season, because you can really only go to Antarctica from November until early March. Now it's summer solstice here in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, which shows that it's a spherical planet. And of course, all the stars are different down there. So how come we can't see the Southern Cross? Just like you can't see the Big Dipper from the southern hemisphere. So everything's different down there, and even the water rotates different in the southern hemisphere. So it just proves that the Earth is a sphere, and that the findings this year is they took a submersible well deep under the Fitchner ice shelf, and they saw the breeding grounds of the ice fish, which are the keystone species in Antarctica, the fish that feed the penguins and the seals. And without them, there would be a collapse of the food chain. So they've long wondered, well, where are these ice fish breeding and living? And it turns out they're underneath the ice shelf in Antarctica.
You were talking about pre-Diluvian civilization. What do you think, where was Atlantis situated? It's like mystery, big mystery. Where was it?
Yeah, great question.
Do you have some?
Well, and this could be the builder race that we're talking about too. So it could be a worldwide civilization. But as far as the central Atlantean capital, which is described by Plato in his writings, that it was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Strait of Gibraltar and Morocco on the other side. And that's also the Atlas Mountains there, Atlas, Atlantis. But my next book, which is coming out next year, is called underwater archaeology. And I've discovered there is a pyramid off the Azores Islands. It was discovered by a fisherman. I just have the images, the radar scans of it, but a perfectly four-sided pyramid, and it looks like it's part of a larger civilization that would have sunk. Now, keep in mind, when the last ice age had all the fresh water locked up in the mountains, the sea level was much lower, about 70 meters lower. So there's a lot of locations, which I'm covering in my book, Underwater Archaeology, that are now underwater submerged, some of them even megalithic sites. Like, how do you build a megalithic site with 40 meters of water above you? It's impossible. So there must have been this ancient builder race, or Atlantis, Lemuria, and even Hyperborea are these civilizations that came much earlier than Atlantis.
What are your thoughts about giants? Were they also part of this builder race?
Yeah, and it could be that they were the builder race, because all around the world are these elongated skulls, and they are much bigger skulls. They're human-like, but they're not quite human because they have a big bulbous cavity in the back of the head, 30 to 35% larger cranial capacity than a human skull. So they had bigger brains too, and with a bigger brain, perhaps
better thinking,
better thinking, but a bigger body, and there you have the giants. Down in South America, we went and saw them in a museum, and there's another location in Paracas, Peru, where they have 50 of them on display.
But what do scientists say? What?
Well, a lot
What's
of
their
them
explanation
just
for
dismiss it because they don't want to have to change the history. Once again, like the pyramids in Bosnia, it really rewrites history. And so there's a lot of resistance to incorporating these elongated skulls. So they'll just say, oh, they were wrapped and they were using cranial deformation.
It was cultural, thing, or putting something.
But you can't add a larger brain.
Yeah.
So they're clearly a different species altogether.
And about the giants, in 2002 in Afghanistan, the American Military Special Forces Unit encountered a giant. Now, this story has been heard multiple times, yet I had a Navy SEAL, former SEAL Team 6, whom Brad and I know, and when we were discussing giants, he confirmed that story. So he knows for a fact that there was a giant that came out of a cave in Afghanistan in 2002 that fought American Special Forces Unit. And that SF unit, I'm not sure if it was the Green Beret unit or if it was the MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command unit, which is typically going to be your recon guys. But they finally took down the giant. It took the rest of the squad. I guess there were 2 members who were killed by the giant swinging a club or a staff.
How tall he was?
From what I heard was 12 foot tall.
Wow.
And took him down, and a Chinook helicopter was brought in, put him in a cargo net, took him off, and never saw him again. So here we have, and again, ancient civilizations, Afghanistan, Iraq, and perhaps maybe this is also for multiple reasons for wars, right? Vietnam. I've had a Vietnam veterans on my show, and one of them confirmed that in the original night vision goggles that were set up, it was red. So you had diclesian is the proper name, right? The DYCLSIAN, I believe, the diclesian chemical that allows you with red light, it's a red lens that allows you to see in the night, but it also has a spectrum of light that offsets the normal seeing eye, and they could see demons and creatures that were flying. And he confirmed that actually happened. And the CIA had to classify because all of the gunners went mad when they were wearing the very first version of the night vision goggles in Vietnam. The American gunners on the helicopter gunships going in started shooting at things, and the report said that they were shooting at flying winged creatures that looked like vampire bats that were coming at them. So maybe then there's something interdimensional about that, but it got classified, and part of that declassification under the Freedom of Information Act now has it heavily redacted these files, and that's why they had to then change the light spectrum in the night vision goggles after the fact, but I've had that veteran on the show confirm this. So there's so much that's gone on in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, stargates, right? We have craft under the ice in Antarctica that Brad talks about as well. So again, we are, not alone in the universe. As X-Files said, X-Files has done some disclosure too. Yeah. Black goo, right?
Yeah,
and then we have black goo stuff and where that comes from. It's truly amazing because we're basically, the sci-fi is actually, again, our reality. And I don't think it's important for us at all to get into fear about what has been hidden, because once we have knowledge, then there's always ways to overcome anything that is malevolent, because we have our prime creator on our side. And then we also have each other in terms of community, which is number one. And by the way, that's what I've seen in Bosnia and Croatia. Brad and I have talked many times over the last 2 weeks traveling together, that the community of the people, families, and then neighborhoods being together, playing, conversing, having meals, having open dialogue and discussion, not being like this on their phones, putting an iPad babysitter in front of the child and seeing. We don't see families at tables doing that here. You see it all across North America, Central and South America, and all the countries that I visit. As soon as you're in the inner cities, everybody is stuck on a phone or a tablet under LED lights, which everybody knows also burn your corneas. We have to go back to incandescent light, or then the free energy lights we're going to have with the scalar wave coming back. But this is incredible for all of us to know that what people like Brad have been saying as a truth-oriented speaker on hidden history and ancient history, which he backs up with the receipts for decades, well, now is the time for all of us to celebrate that, because that ancient is the new history that we need to be teaching our kids and their generations moving forward.
Yes. So you're optimistic about the future,
Yeah,
because we see a lot
absolutely.
of divide now. Some say some really dystopic things are going to happen. But also in this, our spiritual community, many people talk about ascension, about a big awakening. So what do you think?
100%. It's on the Great Awakening. I mean, it's very easy. There's an expression in English, get lost in the trees, or you can't see the forest through the trees, right? But as soon as you rise, and that expression means climb up. I used to also be a wildfire fighter. So after the military, I spent 2 seasons as a fire ranger, jumping out of helicopters, fighting forest fires in Ontario, the Yukon, and whatnot. Well, as soon as you go up above the trees, you can see the rest of the forest. And you go up to a fire tower, or you're in a helicopter, you can see far out here. Well, here we are. When you're talking about the Great Awakening and ascension, ascension means to be above. Right? Ascension is like climbing that staircase to heaven, like Led Zeppelin said in his great famous song. So if you're down here in the trees and people are like, this chemtrail this, and the new jab that, and lockdown this, and the polarization, and this
nuclear
war, all this kind of stuff, that is exactly where the globalist controllers want you to be, because they're just pushing these buttons to have you come around and do this, and then everybody's locked up in their energy of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And when you're in fear, uncertainty, and doubt, emotion overrides logic. You have to get above that and step back and say, you don't need to be in the weeds about this. And awareness, sure. Some type of action you might need to take, great. But at the end of the day, remember what politics is. It's an etymology of words. And I'll give 5 examples of that. First, politics. Poly means many, ticks is parasites in English, right? Look at the word mortgage, which many of the Commonwealth have to buy their home, right? Get a mortgage. Here in Croatia, you want to get a mortgage? How old are you? You're 50 years old? Oh, you have a 15-year mortgage because it cuts off at 65. Okay, well, guess what mortgage means? It is 2 French words, 2 French nouns. Mort is death, gage is pledge. So you have a death pledge, right? Government. Well, that's a Latin term, governus mentis. What does that mean in English? To control minds. So when we sit here and look at the etymology of words, we have to stand back from that and go, what is our true nature? Which is altruistic. Every human being, every child, every baby that is born naturally altruistic and with innocence. It's the environment. That environment can be family, societal, political, religious, you name it. also the food, the water, baby formula versus baby's milk, it depends, right? That can start corrupting and breaking down the altruistic and the nature of that child and the innocence that it has. But that is our innate nature, is altruism, community, and to serve others. That's who we are. So once we remember where we are, let's continue to reconnect from that space, and let's continue to look at the great ascension and how it is that each one of us, viewers, are going to contribute to their home, to their family, to their community, even if they love to make shoes, design clothing, be a bricklayer, a stonemason, a fisherman, you name it. You have a contribution to make, but do your best to not get down here. Do not get down. As soon as they get down here, they have won. They have won. And it's our consciousness too is the final point on this. I learned transcendental meditation from one of Maharishi's instructors about 15 years ago. And I've been doing it nearly daily ever since in 2011 when I learned it. And when you sit there in meditation, what we have seen now, again, science proving mysticism, that in Washington, D.C., it was 1982 or 1984, the study, where the Maharishi brought 200 meditators to Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Memorial, main monument of all of America, right there, and they meditated. And within 5 days, the measured effects they started following, that then went over 6 months, I believe, in this study, of major crime in Washington, D.C., plummeted over 30%. That includes rape, serial killers, etc. Petty theft and other crime plummeted over 50%. 200 people meditating for 20 minutes, twice a day.
The Maharishi
effect.
Yeah.
So again, when you're looking at consciousness and ascension versus all the other things that are scare tactics or programs, have an awareness, be an observer, and the best thing that you can do is get into prayer and or meditation and take care of yourself that way, and that allows you to take care of other people.
Thank you. Can you also say something about this topic? Connection of spirituality and this particular time we live in. How do you see it unfold?
Yeah, and as Brad said, it's measurable effects of meditation, of when you're in a peaceful state, you don't stress your body as much and you can live a better and happier life. But we're at this period of time right now where we're starting to get this slow drip of disclosure, but it's really starting to flow now, where we've heard that the military has made contact with at least 5 different extraterrestrial races. And I think we're virtually on the verge of entering this galactic brotherhood and sisterhood with other ET races that look very much like ourselves. One of those 5 are called the Nordics. They're just tall, white-skinned, white-haired, could pass as, what did they say on Fox News? That they would be like a Swedish guy who's 7 foot tall. You think I'm tall? Well, they're even taller than me. And so, but then we have these stupid things like this war going on with Iran that nobody agrees with. And it's still a very primitive planet in that sense. So we would like to see the end of wars where we can really uplift all of humanity. Nobody gets left behind. And then I think we can have that very meaningful connection with some of these benevolent ET races who are monitoring planet Earth. I mean, they're watching us. This has got to be the greatest show in the universe right now, because we're at this point
on the YouTube channel. Yeah.
We're at this point where the human race could either destroy itself or come together and reach some kind of world peace that would allow us then to migrate off planet Yeah.
Well
Start
said.
exploring the planet, the universe, like they did in Star Trek.
Well said.
You know, our Star Trek future is right here and right now.
Yes. So as we wrap up this fantastic conversation, maybe you have some closing words, maybe some advice for our viewers how to stay aware, strong, not fall under fear. You know, some practical advice. Maybe something you in your daily life are, you know, doing, practicing, working on.
Well, there's power in the word fuck. And, you know, I have a couple different series on the Sovereign Soul Show, you know, and one of them is called Fuck It Fridays, putting fun in the funk of life. And while the creed of my show is love, levity, liberty. Now, levity in English has two different meanings. Levity means laughter, so we're having a good laugh. And levity, as we all know, scalar wave, levitation, elevation, we're elevating our vibration, our consciousness. So it's all done by a proper design. That is our ethos, our creed. The Sovereign Soul Show stands for love, levity, and liberty. Now, to your point, Inez, is when people are getting into fear or anger, and this is a natural part of our human psychology. So you do not compartmentalize it, number one. Do not try to put it in a box and stuff it away somewhere for a long term. Number two, do not. That's the worst thing you could do. Of course, if you're a mother or father and your children are there, you know, and things are angering you, yeah, you might have to deal with that a little bit later on. But it's important to have a discharge. And that discharge can be through fitness. It might be even, you know, dropping a few F-bombs in a safe area away from children so they're not always picking it up because they're going to repeat what you say immediately. And then the other thing too is when we look at the natural environment of any animal, right? So let's just imagine it's a cat. Many people are familiar with house cats or dogs. If you scare a house cat, what does it do, Inez? You scare a cat, what does it do? Arch its back, jump up, hiss, right?
Yeah.
5 minutes later, as soon as the threat's gone, maybe somebody beeped a horn and it's 5 minutes later, what's that cat doing?
Sleeping.
It's totally forgot. It's sleeping, right? It's shook it off. That's something that's primal, innate in all sentient life, nature, us, bears, cats, dogs, mountain lions, wolves, whatnot. So we shake it off. So find a way to shake it off and you get back to that state of homeostasis wherever you are living. Even if that homeostasis requires you to sleep or take a power nap for 20 minutes. And then community. Make sure you have a great community nearby, friends that you can speak to about certain things, right? Like whether it is the nuclear weapons or the war, you don't have enough of these files that are released yet. You know, well, let's look back at certain things because we also have been programmed epigenetically through the last several generations of our parents, their parents, etc., to start focusing on what's ahead of us in the next minute, in the next week, maybe a month, that's it. And we are programmed, and this is all in our human psychology now, all around the Western world. So over 5 billion people roughly right now above the age of 12 because of TikTok and all that crap for children right now, right? Is that you forget what happened 3 months ago. You don't look at things from an analytical perspective. Deductively, we are not looking at, well, okay, it's July 2026. Where were we in July 2024? And then so look at the situation that might be really upsetting you, a politic thing, a files type of thing, and going, where are we so far, right? And where were we? Not just 2 years ago, where were we 20 years ago? Did you even know that? Was it in your awareness? Did we know about this globalist agenda to kill everybody, but keep 500 million of them as cyborgs? That's the agenda. Well, hey, look, they published books about it.
Yeah.
It's right here, right?
I know.
But now we all know. So that knowledge that's applied gives us the innate power to stand in our power, the one that we were given, and our soul is a sound of unlimited love. That was an acronym, a download I received from Creator 3 years ago in meditation. And Creator said, make sure everybody knows, sovereign soul, the sound of unlimited love. That's our soul. And we're in this corporeal, physical vessel for a period of time. Maybe I'm here for another hour, 2 weeks, 2 decades, and that's it. But all of our souls will be here. And I'd like to look at it from this standpoint. Do we have a life review? Do we go to a heavenly realm? I believe there's a heavenly realm. Yes. But I want to know that whatever happens after I exit this body, that I felt that for the most part, I was doing the best that I could to contribute, have fun, and also stand for something that has meaning. And I think that's kind of the way that we should look at it, as a self-check report card, if this makes sense to you, like we did in school.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, what Brad said, just live life, try to be happy. I like the French term joie de vivre, the joy of living. Enjoy great meals. We like to travel, meet new people, see new places. Life is really just an adventure, and it's how you go through that adventure will form your demeanor and the way you view life and how you handle situations and deal with other people. So I just try to be happy and uplifting every day and do little generous acts of kindness if I get the opportunity. And that's the way we should be. That is being human in this world, and how we can meet perfect strangers and just hit it off right away, because I think our similarities are a lot more than our differences, that we're all part of the human race. And to be here in a faraway land for Brad and I, and to meet such a wonderful couple like yourselves, and just to have this great conversation, just gives me a lot of confidence that there are really good people in the world, and just doing what we're doing is that little bit of help that we can uplift the rest of the world, and hopefully we will reach the golden age in our lifetime. And I think it's quite attainable.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Amen.
This is such a wonderful conversation. I'm so happy that you came here. Really.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best in your mission.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Same to you. And you're welcome to join my show at any time. We'd love to hear your story as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hvala.
Evo, dragi gledatelji, vjerujem da ste uživali u ovom našem razgovoru. Hvala vam što ste bili s nama i uskoro se vidimo s nekim novim gostima i novim temama.